over in Matthew 16 when the Catholic Church made him the head of the church, right? He wasn't even saved yet, right?
Wow.
And so here, and the men that held Jesus mocked him and smote him, in which they had blindfolded him, and they struck him on the face and asked him, saying, Prophesy, who is it that smote thee? And many other things, and blasphemously spake they against him. Now, here you had the 6 different trials of the Lord Jesus. The very first one was before Annas, and he was the former high priest. They brought him. You find that in John 18, verses 13 through 23. The second time he was before Caiaphas, and he was Annas' son-in-law, and he was the present ruling high priest. And the idea was to gather evidence for the full council hearing that was going to follow. They were going to take him. The only problem they did with this is kind of like Adam Schiff in those meetings, those congressional meetings they had where they didn't invite the Republicans, where the Republicans weren't allowed in, okay? And they had these meetings that nobody knew about, right? This was done at nighttime, in the time of darkness, which was unlawful. It was an unlawful trial to begin with, okay? But it was done at night. Not all of the Sanhedrin was notified. There were a number of them that were not told. Josephus, as we go through here, were not told about the hearing, so they weren't there. And so here, the third time, trial before the council of the Sanhedrin, and that was the formal religious trial, and that was the purpose. They went in there with the very purpose of seeking, of getting a death penalty. It's like you have today. Like all this stuff with the deep state and these fake trials with President Trump, nothing's changed. It's still the same out there, okay? And so the whole purpose of going into the Sanhedrin was but they had a problem. They couldn't find false witnesses to bear false witness. They said, look, we need some people. It's almost today, you probably go up on the internet and says, we're looking for some good liars, okay? And I mean, today, boy, we got a bunch of them out there, okay? And then you had a trial before Pilate. Now, the Romans had to take him before Pilate because they didn't have the authority, or the Jews didn't have the authority to pass the death penalty. So they had to take him before Pilate. But even though they didn't have the authority, what they would do is they would take it upon themselves to condemn someone and stone them to death, like they did Stephen. And that violated the law, but usually the Romans let it, look the other way. But this was a different case. Why? Jesus was very, very, very popular amongst the people, very well known amongst the people. The Sanhedrin had to turn the people against the Lord Jesus. They had to. How did they do that? With false propaganda. Okay, like if you might have noticed, the Democrats have put out that President Trump had investments. They told in this drug that they use to treat malaria, and so. That was a false. He didn't have any money invested, but I tell you who did have money invested in that, Bill Gates and by the way, how many of you heard the program Friday night where we played Dr. Fauci 3 times? We played him saying, you heard that? Where he said in January of 2017, when Trump just got into office, he said, we're going to have a surprise pandemic. He's talking to other communists there. We're going to have a surprise pandemic. That's what Mr. Fauci said. We have him. Now they'll probably find a way to get to that, but I played it.
Wow.
So people could hear him say it. And so, just like all this stuff with Obama that you would have never heard anyplace else, like when he was talking about how we have trained up ISIS and we've armed ISIS and they're ready to go. You won't hear that, not even on Fox News, will you?
No.
And then the trial before Herod. Now, a courtesy and guilt-sharing act by Pilate because Jesus was from Galilee, and that was Herod's district. And they didn't, up to this time, they didn't like each other, but Pilate had to kind of give in because of Caesar and let Herod be the king there. And Herod was actually a half-breed Jew. He wasn't really a Jew, okay? He was a Herodian, okay? And they weren't really looked upon. Actually, they were despised by the Jews, okay? And here, in fact, the Herodians and the Sanhedrin, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the Pharisees and the Sadducees hated the Herodians and vice versa. The only time they came together was to try to condemn Jesus. They formed an unholy alliance, like the Communist Party today and the radical Muslims in our country. Okay, there's an unholy alliance there amongst them. And then the last trial, of course, was before Pilate. Now, Pilate's last effort to avoid condemning an obviously innocent man. Jesus' trial was actually, of course, as you said, a series of very, very, very carefully controlled to accomplish the death of Jesus. The verdict was predicted, but certain legal procedures were necessary. A lot of effort went into condemning and crucifying an innocent man. Jesus went through an unfair trial in our place so that we would not have to face a fair trial and receive the will. Well, that's very true what it says here. If we all faced a fair trial, do you think we'd all be condemned?
Yes.
Yep. Folks, the only thing the law could do for us would be to condemn us, huh?
Right.
So I wanted to go back to where we left off over in Matthew 26.
Verse 30.
In Matthew 26. And when they had sung a hymn, they went out into the Mount of Olives. Then said Jesus unto them, all ye shall be offended because of me this night, for it is written, I will smite the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock shall scatter. Matthew 26, verse 31. But after I am risen again, I will go before you into Galilee. Peter answered and said unto him, though all the men shall be offended because of thee, yet will I never be offended. And Jesus said unto him, verily I say unto thee that this night before the cock crow thou shalt deny me thrice. Peter cried unto him, saying, though I should die with thee, yet will I not deny thee. Likewise also said all the disciples. Then cometh Jesus with them into the place called Gethsemane. I just heard, it was an amazing thing this week. I heard a guy, a preacher, and he was saying that Jesus when the soldiers came to get Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, there was 1,000 of them. There was 1,000 soldiers. Folks, there wasn't those 1,000 soldiers. I've been in that garden, okay? And that garden is not much wider than this room here at all. And it's probably about from here to the driveway out here, at the end of the driveway, okay? And you're not going to put no 1,000 soldiers in there, okay? But this guy was on the radio preaching that. And like earlier too, when I heard Bruce and Don, when they were talking about what is coming, and they were misquoting from Matthew 24, the tyranny. He says, they were saying, flee the tyranny. Well, the Lord Jesus was talking to the Jewish people during the tribulation period, okay? That's why we talked about the 5 W's, okay? He was talking to them. He wasn't talking to the church,
Right.
folks.
Exactly. We aren't there.
We're not to flee. What are we to do? We're to stand against the tyranny. We're to stand up against the tyranny. And so, then cometh Jesus with them into a place called Gethsemane. and said unto his disciples, Sit ye here, while I go and pray yonder. And he took with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, and began to be sorrowful, very heavy. Then saith he unto them, My soul is exceeding sorrowful, even unto death. Tarry ye here, and watch with me. And he went a little further, and fell on his face, and prayed, saying, O my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will. In other words, here, Jesus was not in any way being disobedient to the will of the Father. But he was saying, nevertheless, that's my job. That's why I'm here. That's why I came into this world. That's why he rebuked Peter so hard. He was born for the sole purpose of dying, okay, for the sins of the world. He was born as a man. God became a man for the sole purpose of dying. Nobody else could have done it but him. But as thou wilt. And he came into the disciples, finding them asleep, and said unto Peter, What, could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray that you enter not into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. And he went away again second time and prayed, saying, O my Father, if this cup may not pass from me, except I drink it, thy will be done. And he came and he found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. And he left them and went away and prayed, and the third time saying the same words. Then cometh he to his disciples and say unto them, Sleep on now, take your rest. Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go, let us be going. Behold, he is at hand that doth betray me. And while he yet spake, lo, Judas, one of the 12, came, and with him a great multitude with swords and staves, from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the Roman soldiers carried the swords, and here it was up to the Sanhedrin had to carry, guards carried staves. Now he that betrayed him gave him a sign, saying, Whomsoever I shall kiss, the same is he, hold him fast. And forthwith he came to Jesus and said, Hail, Master, and kissed him. And Jesus said unto him, Friend, wherefore art thou come? Then came they and laid hands on Jesus and took him. And behold, one of them which were with Jesus stretched out his hand and drew his sword and struck his servant of the high priest and smote off his ear. That was Malchus, who he cut off his ear. Then said Jesus unto him, Put up again thy sword unto his place, for all they that take the sword shall perish with the sword. Thinking that I cannot now pray to my Father, and he shall presently give me more than 12 legions of angels. But how then shall the scriptures be fulfilled, that thus it must be? And at the same hour said Jesus to the multitudes, Are you come out as against a thief with swords and staves for to take me? I sat daily with you teaching in the temple, and you laid no hold on me. But all this was done, that the scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled. Then all the disciples forsook him and fled. And they that had laid hold on Jesus led him away to Caiaphas the high priest, where the scribes and the elders were assembled. But Peter followed him afar off into the high priest's place, and went in and sat with the servant to see the end. Now the chief priests and the elders and all the council sought for a witness against Jesus to put him to death, but found none. Yea, though many false witnesses came, yet found they none. And at the last came 2 false witnesses and said, This fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to build it in 3 days. That ain't what Jesus said. What was it he said? He said, destroy this temple, meaning his body, and I will raise it in 3 days. That's what he said. So what did they do? Okay. And the high priest rose and said unto him, Answer thou nothing? What is it which these witnesses against thee? But Jesus held his peace. And the high priest answered and said unto him, I adjure thee by the living God that thou tell us whether thou be the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus said unto him, Thou hast said, Nevertheless I say unto you, hereafter shall you see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power and coming in the clouds. Now, what was going on here? They knew one thing. They had less than 24 hours before the start of the Sabbath. And so they had to have him murdered. They had to have him. They knew that he was innocent. How many of these high priests do you think understood Isaiah 53? How many of them do you think knew that Jesus had fulfilled every single part of Isaiah 53?
Probably most, if not all.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. But here, like Satan himself, they found themselves to what? To fight against God, huh?
Yep.
Now let me ask you say, how could that be? How could that be? Right? Well, let's take a look at today.
Huh.
Jesus says what? He said it's harder for a rich man, or it's easier for a camel to fit through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to go to heaven. How does that affect the prosperity preachers?
Greatly.
Okay, you have Joe Osteen, okay, saying it's time to live the good life now. What about T.D. Jakes? He says, I want my stuff now. I don't want to wait to get to heaven. I want my stuff now, okay? What about Kenneth Copeland? I'm a billionaire. I want to be I'm heading towards my second billion. I want it now. I want it now, right?
Covetous, yeah.
Jesus says, place up your treasures on Wall Street, right?
No.
No.
In heaven.
Place up your treasures in heaven, right?
Yes.
Amen.
What's it saying in James chapter 5? Woe unto you rich men! You've stored up all your treasures for the last day, meaning to your retirement, and you're not going to use them. Somebody else is going to use them. Okay? What did he say to the rich man who had abundant crops? And he said, I think I'm going to build more silos and wait till the price of grain goes up and then make a bigger profit on it. But there were hungry people that needed that money, needed that food right there. He wasn't caring about the hungry people, was he?
No.
Okay.
He's a fool.
What did Jesus tell him?
You fool.
Fool, your soul's going to be required of you today. You're not going to make a profit. Okay. And here now, they knew this. They had to get him killed before the start of the Passover. Then the high priest rent his clothes, saying, He has spoken blasphemy! What further need have we of witnesses? Behold, now you have heard this blasphemy. What think ye? They answered and said, He is guilty of death. Then did they spit in his face and buffeted him, and others smote him with the palms of their hands, saying, Prophesy unto us, thou Christ, who is he that smote thee? I'm going to close this down for the radio and then finish it off here. We've been coming to you from Doers of the Word Baptist Church. You've been listening to us this morning on the Liberty Works Radio Network. And you can hear this message replayed at 2 a.m., 8 a.m., 2 p.m., and 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And our website is wrwl.org. And until next week, we want to say good morning, God bless, and remember, always, let's do it. Keep fighting the fight.